Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Help Is Here podcast brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. Welcome back, Mary. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm doing very good, thank you. Yeah, so in today's episode, we're going to talk a bit about denying the wanting of pornography and also the real possibility of going beyond compulsion and being in control of yourself moment by moment and being in control of yourself when it comes to every single compulsion as well. So I guess I just want to provide a bit of an update on myself as well, before we get into really the nitty-gritty of the content. So I've got to say, the benefits to quitting porn have been really hitting home for me recently as well, because obviously today is actually my second day having gone full time running this new business with you. It was a goal for a while to quit porn. And I think finally I've got to this point where I have the courage and the confidence in what we're teaching to go all in. And it's just been two of the best days. It's honestly been so fun just talking to people, sharing the method and building more assets for our clients as well. And secondly, obviously going to Morocco last week as well with my family and friends, just like the perfect refresh. So yeah, feeling really good and just excited to share more now. I think, working 3 days a week and helping our clients was getting quite difficult and tiresome at times in terms of fitting the 3 days in that I was doing for
Yeah.
my tech. But yeah, I got so much more time now really to do the podcast and help people. So super excited. So yeah, anyway, with that out of the way, let's actually talk about how do you actually get there, get to that point where you are feeling in control of yourself, feeling free, feeling happy, and really building this life that you genuinely just love. And I think a lot of it starts with connecting to the desire, acknowledging the wanting, and then obviously dealing with it in the correct way. So I was talking to someone recently this week, and I think the thing that really stood out to me is that they didn't want to connect to that wanting. And they kept on saying that they don't want porn. Now, this is kind of getting into fact one a bit of our program. And I just want to ask you, Mary, why is denying that wanting never going to help someone actually quit porn?
Well, for starters, you don't want to want it, because the thing is when you have that desire, when you have that wanting and you don't have a way to deal with it, and you don't have a way to deal with it, given all your history of trying to outrun it or whatever you're trying to do to not do it, you don't want to want it. But the thing is that desire is going to come over you regardless of whether you want it or not. It's like you don't want it too bad, but it's normal for people to want to say, I don't want to do this, when that's just really not true. If you don't want to do something, well, you sure as hell aren't going on the internet trying to find a way to stop doing it, right? You just, if it's something you don't want to do, you don't do it. But it's totally natural for people to want to try to deny the wanting,
Mm,
because historically, they acknowledge that, or they let it happen without trying to block it out, trying to resist it, trying not to acknowledge it, doing whatever, then they end up doing the behavior, and then of course they move into all the regret and everything else and all the negative consequences that come from engaging in the behavior. So
mm,
yeah, they don't want it. Too bad. It's
yeah.
like it's going to happen whether you want it or not. So I
Mm,
mean the desire itself. So yeah, but there's some, a multitude of you know advice, options and things that people are told to do to avoid that wanting. So they're creating neural pathways to avoid the wanting. It's
mm,
just, and it's just a vicious cycle. It's but the thing is if you don't deal with the pathways that are of the compulsive desire, that's not going to change. You might create some new pathway that's about, learning how to, play the guitar, to try to avoid that wanting. And okay, now you know how to play the guitar, but you're still addicted. So yeah, that's my take.
yeah,
So
I agree. And I think the thing is that gets in the way of people from actually connecting to that wanting is the feelings of shame, because often that is the
Yeah.
first sort of feeling that comes up when people do want to engage in this behavior. Maybe they've looked at stuff they're not proud of. I know I certainly have, things on
Yeah.
basically like for years what I was doing is essentially I was like, right, I'm not going to go on these porn sites anymore because I had the junky thinking that if it's not a porn site then it's okay, which is obviously
Yeah.
bullshit. It's
Yeah.
conflated thinking. So what I was doing for a number of years is Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and you can find some utter filth on those social media platforms. And so because it wasn't a porn site and therefore not
Yeah.
porn, therefore not a relapse or whatever bullshit I made up for
Not really
myself.
porn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just some
Yeah.
absolute junky thinking, textbook stuff. Because of that, I then ended up essentially getting into these spirals where I would pretty much find the most extreme content I could on platforms like Instagram and Twitter. I mean, fortunately, it never got too bad. Nothing
Mhm.
ever illegal, of course,
Still
but
plenty of it, there's
yeah,
plenty of it. Yeah.
yeah, some
Yeah.
pretty weird stuff. I mean, the main things for me, and I don't want to call it weird necessarily, but it's stuff that doesn't align with my values, and that's the main thing. And it's stuff that doesn't even align with my actual sexual taste. Like
Yeah.
when I've seen stuff like that, or even thought about stuff like that outside of a compulsive state, it just does not turn me on at all. And like when
Yeah.
I've finished as well, like and the post-nut clarity as such hits when you've had the orgasm, you're just disgusted by yourself. Like you're not actually attracted to those things one bit at all. And like
Yeah.
thinking about it now, I'm like, yeah, I'm genuinely just not attracted to it. And I could even be in a state of arousal and I still wouldn't be attracted to it now. It's just completely compulsion and to do with
Yeah.
that tolerance cycle, right?
Yeah.
Of wanting more and more and more.
Yeah.
And anyway, where was I going with all of this? That obviously
I don't
creates
know.
a load of shame. That creates a load of shame
Right.
because you've
Yeah.
looked at stuff you're not proud of. And so then the natural first sort of place that your mind's going to go is, well, because I don't know how to deal with this problem, I'm going to deny that wanting because I
Right.
don't want to feel all of that shame. Maybe it means there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to guys recently, and it's really important for me to get across to people that there's nothing wrong with you intrinsically, inherently. It's not to do with your sexual desires or anything going on there. This is to do with compulsion. This is to do with
Yeah.
addictive neural pathways. This is to do with certain thought patterns that
And
can be
building
changed.
tolerance. Yeah. And building tolerance, like you said.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So it's just so key to help people realize that their thoughts don't have to be like this forever. And I was talking earlier, someone also sort of said to me, this is someone who's not learned the program yet or anything. It was a podcast listener. We were having a chat earlier. I really, really enjoyed the chat. Genuinely, it's just one of my favorite parts of today. And, he was kind of saying, like, I can't imagine ever getting to a point where I could be free from all compulsions. Like, that's totally unrealistic. And I sort of said to him, well, yeah, like I kind of wasn't surprised that he thought that. I think I said something along the lines of, okay, well, if you learn your scripts and you do the work, we have this chat again in a month. I'll be very interested to hear what you think about it then, because obviously, we teach things in a certain way. Like there's a comprehensive education on addiction, and you're never gonna know that you can completely change your mindset until you learn different ways of thinking, because those different ways of thinking enable you to feel a different way and then act a different way. And then you build up confidence in yourself. I think what happens is we kind of build these feedback loops where it's like, I think a certain way, and then feel a certain way, and then act a certain way. And then you build up confidence in yourself that actually, when you think a certain way, you feel a certain way, then you act a certain way. And then because you've acted that way, you want to act that way again. So then you want to think that way again. And then if you know how to change how you think in a very specific way, then you can continue acting in the ways that you want to act indefinitely. But I think going back to the original point, a lot of people don't actually believe that in the future they can, moment by moment, be fully in control of themselves. So what would you respond to that, Mary?
Well, it's totally understandable because the way addiction is being treated is with other things that are potentially going to become addictive. So substitute a healthy behavior. Okay, so it's exercise. Now you become a compulsive exercise addict. I've worked with exercise compulsives, it really exists, but people don't believe it because it's like, oh, well, fitness is the rage and it's so good for you and whatever. Well, if you can't not exercise without getting freaked out, I mean, this is a problem, and so when you are continually, you know, trying to replace, an addiction with another addiction, and so you feel compelled to do this, you feel compelled to do that, you continuously feel compelled to change the way you feel rather than just the way that you feel is okay, and know that you're in control at any moment of making a choice that's going to serve you in the long term. Of course, you're going to feel like there's no freedom from that. How would you feel anything different? I mean, it's like when your history and your all the evidence points to, oh, I'm always going to feel like I want to change the way I feel because I feel uncomfortable. Well, you're always trying to chase like whatever it is. Why on earth would you believe that true mental freedom from compulsive or addictive behaviors is possible when you have
Mm,
no experience of that?
mm,
And that's where we provide the tool to be able to get the experience. And like you say, each time you do it, you're creating a new neural pathways from desire to, if you even have the desires. I mean, you get to a point that you just don't have compulsive desires anymore. I mean, it's just like you have a desire to do something and you can take it or leave it, like literally take it or leave it, and so, but that comes through experience. And when you have the tool to change those pathways, then as you build that evidence, then you can see, and then it bleeds into all aspects of your life. So yes,
mm.
you can, but completely understandable why people think it's not possible,
Yeah.
you
You
know.
know what sort of comes to mind as well is that most people, when they talk about discipline and, me saying, for example, you actually can genuinely be in control of yourself moment by moment, like that is possible. Most
Yeah,
people are probably going to attach in their mind connotations to things like willpower, discipline,
right.
strength, words like that, because that's kind of been the approach maybe for the last, I don't know how many years. And that's the kind
Yeah,
of way of doing it. And that's what's talked about a lot. But there isn't actually that many people talking about how you can still get that same outcome of being in control of yourself moment by moment without the heavy resistance and the
yeah,
intense sort of feelings of agitation and conflict, and instead it can
yeah.
be from a place of empowerment, freedom, and yeah, sure. I'm not saying it's easy. Yeah, there's still
Yeah,
some
well,
bits that,
it's we that word empowerment, we use it a lot. It's pretty buzzy right now, but it's really true because that empowerment comes from feeling grounded in the moment that you can choose what you're going to do rather than that helpless feeling like, oh my God, if a desire comes over me, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to avoid it? How am I going to will my way through this? And all that sort of, like you say, that intense, those feelings of conflict and feelings of like you're in battle, rather than you're in like accepting it because you have a way to tap into the rational brain and be able to think it through at any given moment,
mm,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I
yeah,
think obviously it's very different to like overcoming addiction, but I was sort of thinking a little bit earlier this week about how when I've done races like a half marathon, for example, I'll really embrace the pain of running incredibly fast because I feel it's worth it. It's like for this purpose, I'm trying to achieve something. And so I'm more than happy to run whilst feeling a stitch, whilst feeling out of breath, while feeling sick, whatever. I will do that. And I don't mind. Like it feels so worth it. And like afterwards, I always thank myself afterwards for like putting myself through that. And I just think there's so much so much to be gained from experiencing discomfort. And the other thing I'd often ask people is like, well, what is the alternative? Like, if you don't experience that discomfort, I can almost guarantee that the discomfort in your life is going to be way greater
yeah,
and it's going to be indefinite. Nothing's going to
That's
actually
not
change.
temporary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Whereas, if you learn how to think through things and experience that discomfort temporarily, when you're choosing to change these addictive neural pathways, it's going to be a temporary thing that doesn't last forever and feels good whilst you're choosing to change these addictive neural pathways and
Yeah.
empowered and in control of yourself moment by moment. And I would honestly say, if you're not feeling in control of yourself moment by moment, the only thing that's going on is the addicted part of the mind is spouting out some bullshit, junky
Yeah.
thinking, and you're listening to it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with junky thinking. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It happens to every single client we work with. And
Yeah.
I've had junky thinking for 10 years, so I know it better than any, well, as well as,
You know, it
people.
makes me think about like, how people do not believe that they can get free or whatever. And this client the other day who's relatively new and is in deep, used the script and he says, "Well, yeah, I used it." And he said, "I was stunned that it worked." And I was like, it's not the first time we've heard that, but it's like when you don't have that, you don't have the experience of seeing like, oh, I have this desire, I apply this script, and it actually works. And then you can do that. And when you do that repetitively, then that's where your permanent change comes in. Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted you.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's
Yeah.
interesting because I had a different client who I'm working with one on one at the minute, and yeah, he was like, he sent me like a GIF, I think, or a meme or something. It was like a photo anyway, and it was like, "It's working, Tom, it's
Yeah.
finally working," or something like that. I don't think he
Yeah.
said finally actually. He just said like it's working, and then he was like, "Yeah," I think it was like the script worked like with exclamation marks, and I was like,
Yeah.
he replied like, "Good." Like, yes,
Yeah.
obviously. I wasn't
When we
surprised.
think about all the clients that are like in fear, how many people have, I mean, pretty much everybody saying, I'm afraid to try again. So
Yeah.
because they have this experience of failure, 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 failure. Well, you're going to get that experience of not everything leads to failure, and and in my personal opinion,
Mm.
my personal, my humble
But
opinion,
on that
my humble
point,
opinion is that it's the methods that are failing,
yeah. But also,
not the clients.
if you
But
don't know
this
how
is
to
what they're
deal,
learning in their minds. This is what they are hanging on to is like, oh my God, I don't have a way to deal with this, so I'm going to be stuck with this forever. And they're
mm,
trying to accept that, and then it's like, wait, I can't live with this. And so it's like, again, it's living in that constant conflict, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, I think my earlier point, what I was gonna say, if you're trying to quit porn but not feeling good whilst doing so, then, in my opinion, anyway, nowadays, I honestly think there's something wrong with your method. Like, or
yeah,
at least it's not. I guess you can have the outcome of quitting porn without going beyond compulsion or without actually feeling genuinely in control of yourself. Like you definitely can do that. I mean, I did it for many, many months, but it depends what you want, I suppose. If you're happy actually living in an addiction, controlling it, maintaining it, doing temporary streaks, then eventually going, ah, fuck, I've relapsed again. You can do that. That is an option. But it depends, I suppose, what you really want. Because eventually you're going to get sick of that and you're going to go, yeah, I've had enough of just always, no matter how hard I try, I'm back here again. And it's this one thing in your life where you're just like, oh my God, like how have I actually done this thing again? It's the most frustrating feeling that I'm sure people will know very well.
well, the other thing too is, junkie thinking can be incredibly shrewd. And if the addictive part of the mind can convince people that it's pointless to try again, even if they can recognize in, what we talk about that, oh, this is something different. If the addictive part of the mind can convince you, oh no, it's not possible to go beyond compulsion, whatever, well, then what? So how do you finish that? That's an addictive thought. Now, how do you finish? How does it end?
Mm,
Oh, this is not going to be anything different. I'm stuck with this forever. Therefore, go ahead and do it,
mm.
right? All junkie thinking leads to justifying engaging in the behavior. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you But the thing is you don't hear the complete thought because the addictive part of the mind is too shrewd to do that until you're already circling the drain. And then it's like, okay, just go ahead and do it, So
Yeah.
yeah,
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 yeah.
there's
And
no
to be
good
honest
reason to
though,
engage.
I don't wanna make out though like this method, you learn the method and then you never ever choose to engage again. I'd be lying if I said we had a 100% success rate. I wish we did. I honestly wish we did. And
Yeah.
we're always trying to help our clients more and more, but we
Mhm.
don't. People have come into our program, learned the script, and then they've had script resistance or they've had junky thinking. And they are gonna have script resistance, they are gonna have junky thinking. Now, obviously, they can either choose in that moment to use that script, think it through, make their choice, change the addictive neural pathways, take a proactive stance, do all the stuff we talk about before they have their liberation day, cool. But there's going to be some people who, yeah, some junky thought comes up and something gets in the way, some kind of bullshit, some junky thought comes along. So they choose to engage. And then, what's happened is, we'll have a chat and we'll be there to help them. And it's obviously never ever going to be any judgment from me and you because we know how persistent that junky thinking is, how shrewd it is. That's why
Yeah.
people always end up back at porn no matter how hard they try. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just addiction's hard. Like it just is hard. Like I've lived that. But what we then do is sometimes we'll ask the client, all right, so do you actually believe in this method? Like this is something the conversation I had is like, all right, so do you believe in this method? Or do you want to try something else? Every single person I've asked that question to, they're like, yeah, like I 100% know this method works because I've used it and it has
Yeah.
worked for me, but some junky thinking got in the way. And sometimes I'd ask as well, I was like, okay, so what do you think the alternative is now? Like, how do you want to go about trying to quit this and like overcome this? And they're always like, yeah, I just want to do what was working, use the
Yeah.
script,
Yeah. Hmm.
and just go again. It'd be great if we did have a 100% success rate, but addiction's hard. People
Well, I've
make you
talked to you
engage.
before about this. Um, we are dealing with one of the most, biologically, innate desires. I mean, I've worked with food compulsion forever and ever, and now working with, porn addiction. It's hard for me to say which one is more challenging. You know, give me a nicotine addict, give me an opiate addict, give me a whatever any day. Easy. It's
Yeah.
like with this method, the success rate is going to be it's like so high. But because these are like innate desires and we have major industries working against that, the porn industry, the healthy eating and fitness industry is all making all of that worse. And we're
Mm,
dealing with these things that people need to engage with. I mean, you don't obviously you don't have to eat. You can become anorexic and that's going to kill you, right? You don't have to have sex, but most people and men, driven by
mm,
sex, they want healthy sexual relationships. They want sex in their life, So, but that's not to say that you can't go from addictive use of porn, addictive use with food, to having a reasonable relationship with either of those things, where you get the benefit of enjoying food. People talk about, oh, I just love to eat. And, these people that are, full on food compulsive, obese, whatever.
mm.
Most of the people that I've worked with that are deep in food compulsion, they hate their relationship with food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they're not enjoying food. They're like, binging and regretting and all of it, just like with the porn, right? So if you are willing to apply the new thinking, you can have a reasonable relationship with sex, right? With
Mm,
food. And when you get through one of these really, deeper addictions, you can have reasonable relationship with anything else you use to alter your state.
mm.
Good Lord, we want to alter our state, come to the United States. I get my hands on some heroin right now, I'd be in.
Just
We want to
ready.
alter our state, but let's do it in a reasonable way that doesn't destroy our lives, you know?
Oh man, yeah.
So,
It's
yeah, if that
interesting,
makes sense. Yeah,
Um, makes me think how important reasonable engagement at reasonable times is. It's like one of my favorite quotes that you've just like
yeah,
embedded into my mindset. And I think that's the other thing going back to like the kind of willpower, discipline, ultra masculine David Goggins approach. That's
yeah,
kind of maybe it works for some people. I'm a big fan of David Goggins in some ways. I've got respect for him in some ways. He's just, if anyone who doesn't know, he's just this absolute mad guy who does the craziest long runs ever, really. Does like mad amount of pull-ups and it's just like all discipline, discipline, discipline sort of attitude, really.
yeah,
To Navy SEAL for a while. But I think the thing is like what I believe real freedom and peace of mind is, and like for anyone going beyond compulsion, is it's not about always being on the grind, always hustling, always like
yeah,
being crazy, crazy, like disciplined. You can be in control of yourself moment by moment and go watch a film for 2 hours, go have sex with your partner, go eat some junk food from time to time. Like that doesn't
yeah,
mean out of control. There's a
yeah,
total difference between engaging in what are called bad habits to being out of control and being in an addiction. But for some
yeah,
reason, the rest of society have muddled the two things up. And so now, if we're engaging in any habit at all that's unhealthy, it's now a bad habit and something that should be frowned upon. Whereas actually, you can have a really, really healthy relationship with KFC. I might have a KFC once a month, but I'm never out of control going round in circles in my head. Oh no, I can't eat KFC. If I eat KFC, I'm gonna
yeah,
want more food and all of this shit. It's like, no,
yeah.
I'm in good shape, I'm okay. Like not perfect shape, but if I have a KFC,
Well,
then I have a
the
KFC.
other thing is the fast food. You know, people are all like, "Oh, it's the fast food. It's the fast food. Is the food is the problem. It's the fast food." It's like, wait, no, we had McDonald's, way before the obesity epidemic, and fast food. It's for convenience. It's for when you're in a hurry, when you don't have time, you don't want to cook, you go drive through, get some fast food, and it's like you can eat fast food in a reasonable way. And it's like, and if you don't eat it all the time, it's not going to be a problem to your health. But the
Mm,
other thing is you can eat shit food all the time. I mean, low quality, shitty food all the time. You're not going to become obese.
mm,
The quality of the food does not make people obese,
yeah,
and then the helplessness factors like, oh, well, it's addictive, all this conspiracy crap is really driving me nuts, is like, it's the food industry trying to make people addicted and all this stuff. It's like,
mm,
no, you can eat some reasonable crap from here, here and there. I mean, do you ever need to have an ice cream cone? No, you don't. But it's like, you go up for an ice cream cone, big deal. You go, it's like, that's not the problem. The quality of the food's not the problem. What's
yeah,
the
yeah,
problem is having compulsive, addicted neural pathways that are getting more and more addicted every time you go on some healthy diet or for the porn, go on a streak, whatever. It's like all
yeah.
that crap is making it worse.
I think, yeah, like absolutely, what it does come down to is once you understand how to deal with compulsive desire,
Yeah,
then it's a non-problem and you don't need to worry about all these industries trying to manipulate you into consuming their bullshit.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. But I do think if you are not aware of how to change your neural pathways and you don't fully understand maybe like junkie thinking and some of the concepts we talk about here on the podcast and teaching the 5 fact scripts and the full method, if you don't know any of that though, I mean, you are really up against it. Like these
Yeah.
companies, they're doing everything they can to get people addicted to their products. Like attention is the value of 2024 and
You
people
know,
desperate.
I don't know if they're trying to get people addicted. I would take issue with that. I think they're trying to sell their products.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't think they understand addiction enough
No,
to
you're right.
be able to go to, you know what I mean, to go like, oh,
Yeah.
let's make this ad to get people addicted. No, they don't know that it's working. You know, they're just
Yeah.
trying to sell their shit, you know, and it's working, but there's a lot more layers to that. So sorry.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah.
No, you are right. I do agree. I don't think anyone's actually out there, trying to mess up people's mental health.
Yeah.
There's girls who do like, let's say, OnlyFans or, the Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, those sort of girls I used to like watch all the time. I don't think they were out there, they weren't out there trying to get me addicted. They were there
Well,
trying to make a living. And I
they're
think
trying
it's
to
the
make
same,
money.
yeah, it's marketing.
Yeah.
I've done a few courses in marketing. I've kind of forgotten most of it, to be honest with you. But yeah, I've learned a bit of marketing. And what it comes down to is you've got a job and you've got KPIs, you're trying to achieve a certain goal. But then if you have millions of people now working in marketing, all competing against each other for people's attention, then the inevitable outcome of that is just a world full of rubbish, I suppose. That's trying to get
Yeah.
people's attention, and yeah, it is. It's kind of hard to deal with that. And I think when it comes to like porn in particular, it's probably harder than ever to not be addicted to porn because if you don't know how to deal with compulsive desire, then you're spending a lot of time on the internet, and now the internet is full of this hypersexualized material. I mean, what chance do you really have?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. It's so difficult to
We're not
not
going to
fall
change
into
any
it.
of that. We're going to change what's going on here so people can feel empowered in the moment and feel good about that empowerment and feel good about applying a new way of thinking because we're not going to change any of that shit out there. I mean, maybe
Mm,
eventually when people are too empowered to be buying into every ad that comes along, you know, maybe
mm.
that will be, I mean, but that's a whole paradigm shift that maybe that's the goal. And hopefully by the time we get that done, I mean, I'll be 6 feet under and you'll be carrying on. Carry on. Crack
Yeah.
on, Tom.
We'll see. Oh,
Yeah.
hopefully you can leave a legacy.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but hopefully you're
Yeah.
not going anywhere on a real one. I don't know what I'd do,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Hopefully
But
not.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I just want to go back to one thing we were talking about earlier, actually, because we were
Sure.
talking about, this sort of biological desire to look at porn, and that's why porn may be more difficult
Yeah.
to overcome than things like, opiates or other addictions, which can be difficult because you have the sort of innate biological desire or evolutionary desire as such. But I can just imagine if I was listening to this in the past and also about reasonable engagement at reasonable times, if I was listening to this in an addiction, that would then become the junky thinking
Yeah.
that needs
I was
me
going to
engaging.
say,
Yeah.
yep, this is just my biological desire.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I just want to address that.
Exactly.
That,
Yeah.
okay, well, the addictive part of your mind listening to this may then go, all right, well, Tom and Mary have talked about reasonable engagement at reasonable times. Maybe it's okay if I do look at porn. I think
Right.
it's really important to kind of make the distinction here that there's some things which overall you probably do want to just cut out your life entirely, but you need to
Yeah.
do that from a place of empowerment of I'm choosing not to do this
Yeah.
behavior. Me personally, things like fast food, yeah, it's just something I don't think about at all. And because I don't think about it, that for me makes it okay and not compulsive. So actually, Mary, I just want you to kind of explain this concept a bit further. Like, what's the difference between compulsive desire and spontaneous desire? Because that's what I'm getting onto here, is that for me, any spontaneous desire, I don't care. Like, I'll engage in a spontaneous desire. If I want to drink at the weekend, I'll have a drink at the weekend because that's never been compulsive for me. But
Yeah.
compulsive, porn use has been a problem for 10 years. So why on earth would I fuck with porn? Like I would never choose to look at porn again because
Yeah. You don't have to. Thank God. You
yeah,
know.
there's no benefit to it at all. Whereas with other things, maybe like drinking, maybe there's some benefits, but kind of going into all those benefits and analyzing that then becomes compulsive. But anyway, over to you. Can you just explain spontaneous versus compulsive desire for our audience?
Well, the thing is spontaneous. Once you are beyond compulsion, that you can have spontaneous desires for things. But I think the most important thing is that people are being taught that they don't know when when they're being unreasonable. They don't know that when they're being compulsive, and then they can get caught up in questioning that and go on the internet and try to figure out what's reasonable and all that stuff. And what we're getting back to is that they do know. I mean, I would say, God, you know, the energy that I've put in over all the years, just, teaching people that they do know, because I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know is just a recipe for relapse, that people do it all the time. And when we get them in a place of knowing, then, there's a big difference between going drive through McDonald's and deciding that I'm going to go and just binge on food. I'm going to give into compulsive desire and I'm going to eat, a massive, an entire box of cookies and sit here and just like a drug addict. I mean, this is what people do.
Mm,
If obese people are telling you that they are not eating incredible amounts of food,
mm,
they're lying. I know this from firsthand. It's not rocket science. And the thing is with the pornography, it's like, you know, when you're trying to bullshit yourself into going into that place, and and once getting people to know, I mean, teaching that over and over and over again and throwing them this lifeline of, I mean, it's incredibly powerful, because
mm.
once you buy into the I don't know crap, helplessness just takes over,
Yeah,
and there's nothing more pervasive coming from the addictive part of the mind than I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Well, what do you know? And that's, we always bring them back to that, and doing that over and over and over again puts them in a position of empowerment and the ability to be reasonable with any behavior,
hmm.
So yeah, if that explains it, I guess.
Yeah,
Sort of.
yeah. I'd just add to that as well. Like one of the main takeaways I've had from you is probably if you're looking for a reason, explanation, justification to rationalize why you chose to do something, then it's probably unreasonable behavior, you know?
Yeah, reasonable behavior does not require justification. It doesn't come to your mind. It's straight out of my book, Beyond Food Compulsion. One of the junkie thoughts is it's okay because. The minute you hear it's okay because that you're justifying, you're bullshitting yourself. It's
Yeah.
like, but the thing is, it takes teaching and it takes, some repetition, but that's what we're here for. So help is here, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
because there's a
absolutely.
lot working against people, but that doesn't mean you're helpless, because there's stuff that's working against you.
Yeah.
It's, you still have the ability with the proper tools. But like you said, with the toughing it out and the resistance and everything, I always use the analogy of trying to move a boulder with your shoulder. We got the pry bars and we've got the levers to be able to actually move a boulder, but these people are just trying, hanging on. I'm gonna just push this boulder, and then it rolls over on them and smashes them, and then they're like, oh fuck, see, I can't do this. Of
Yeah,
course
yeah.
you can't do it. You're trying to push a boulder with your shoulder. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you can't
Yeah.
do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so help is here, and hope is here. There's hope.
Yeah,
Gotta
definitely.
hang the hat on that, right? So
Yeah, and I would say as well, I mean, we're almost coming up to like 12 months since we met now, and I would really say to anyone who's kind of followed a similar trajectory to me of maybe trying NoFap out, maybe getting self-improvement, maybe trying to quit porn in a variety of different ways for a number of years,
mhm.
I can assure you that I I really did not believe that the things that maybe I have in my mind now could ever be in my mind. Like it's hard to envisage this when you're in an addiction. It's so hard to envisage it because there's going to be resistance, there's going to be junky thinking, and I can guarantee the addictive part of your mind's not going to want you to imagine a life where you actually get this shit sorted. Why would
Yeah,
it? It's not in your
it
mind's best
wants you to
interest.
think it's not possible. And
Yeah.
which brings us full circle back around to what we were talking about initially. People
Mm,
believing that it's not possible.
yeah.
And you can
Exactly.
never get beyond compulsion. Not true.
Yeah.
So yeah, we probably ought to wind it up. We've been going on, or we might have to go to an on and on and on meeting. Get it? Get
Yeah.
it? My mentor, Patricia, she came up with that for people who talk too much. They need an on and on and on meeting. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll wrap it up there.
good.
do want to have a chat though, you've been listening to these podcasts a little while and you're sick of always ending up back at porn, back doing the same thing that,
Yeah.
really you don't want to be doing and you want to make an actual change now. Well, just get in touch. As I say, I've just left my job and I've got a bit more time now to talk to people who are interested in learning more about our program. So yeah, jump on a call. Totally free, just a discovery call. We can have a chat and I can better understand you and yeah, just get to know each other for a little bit. I'll leave a link in the description, so hopefully I'll see you there on a call soon. Thanks a lot for listening, as always, and we'll see you in the next podcast episode. Bye bye.
See ya.